Now, in the last video, we identified what was valuable so we could protect the right things. In this video, short video, we're going to look at where those valuables are and how they move around so that we can put those protections in the right places.
And as usual, we're going to use examples from the physical world to help understand. And here is our example house with 3 absent bears, some really lax security, and a thief. In this physical world, we would look at the locations where the valuable assets are placed and what routes there are to and from those places that provide access to and from them. So here, the doors and the windows. In the computer network world, similarly, we might look at which networks or devices our assets are on and what are the routes to get in and out. So in a home network, there is the connection to the internet and the Wi-Fi signal, say, that the neighbours can also reach.
Perhaps it would be better if Mr. Harrison were taken out of the picture.
Sorry, guys, you're doing it again. We all agreed that from now on, when we want someone murdered, i.e. deliberately killed to death, then that's what we're going to say. This is going to be, let's hope Professor Ritson meets with a little accident all over again. We spent 9 months hoping that Professor Ritson would meet with an accident before Leslie made it clear it was an accident we were supposed to make happen.
Now, we should be clear about what we mean, but cyberspace is not physical space, and sometimes the terms we borrow from the real world to use to describe the computer network ones can be a bit loose. So for example, when you use your phone to do your online banking, your valuable assets are the money, or overdraft, in your bank account, which is over there in the bank, and your phone provides access to it. But that access might also be considered an asset, as well as details about how much money you have and where it is might also be assets that are on your phone as well as in the bank. So don't get too caught up in these nuances, especially the first time you work through this. You can always come back and refine it.
Now, at this stage, we're not really interested in who is trying to nick, brick, or trick our stuff. We're just interested in the layout, in the locations, where our assets are, and the routes by which they can be accessed.
But in practice, the relevant possible access routes depend a bit on how the attackers can move around. So upper floor windows aren't normally used to access your house, but they can be reached by someone with a ladder, or a witch, or a Quidditch player on a broom. And the chimney is a possible access route for, say, parachuting Santa Claus. And even the walls and roofs are not barriers to, say, military attack. And then there's rats and mice who can access through routes that people cannot. And similarly, at home for your network, you might also want to include all the mobile phones that are not only connected to their cell networks, but also probably connected to the home Wi-Fi. And we shouldn't forget physical access still, so family and guests who can use the Wi-Fi or the games consoles or the computers or other devices.
Now, don't get too caught up on getting it all right the first time. You should be coming back and reviewing it regularly, and the first time you try this, you'll almost certainly pick some routes in and some routes out that you'll come back to next time and recognise as being not useful, or you'll miss some. Don't get too caught up in that. Do a very quick review to start with, just get used to it. Just pick some of those open routes, have a think about where those routes can be, and get them down.
Now, it can be tempting to just look at the perimeter. So for example here, just the shell of the house itself, the walls, the roofs, the outside door, the windows and so on. But for some valuables, we should be thinking about the inner locations and the routes between them, such as rooms and cupboards and doors. We need to consider how people would move around between places inside and which areas we might want to secure from other areas inside. Not everybody who gets into the house should have a free run of the house. And similarly, in a home network, we want to think about which devices can reach which other devices across which routes. Now, this might not be straightforward, it can be technical, so you might just start with a rough idea of what is on which network, what is cabled into your router and what is connected to the Wi-Fi, for example. And as well as looking inside, we need to look further outside. So we need to look, for example, around the house, we need to look at the grounds that is in and the surrounding neighbourhood. And as we start to expand our view, we can see that there are areas that we control and areas that we don't control, but that are still important to our security. So in this case, for example, we've got the areas inside the fence that we control, but there's this tree on the outside of that provides a way of looking into the upper rooms and maybe jumping over the fence. So we don't control it, but we do want to pay attention to it. And in our home networks or our computer networks, we can consider what is outside our network, but where our assets are located. So again, banking is an example. We don't control the bank networks or the spaces between the banks and us that our assets must cross, but we should pay attention to problems with these. And we can therefore divide up the areas we will look at into areas of responsibility, and these are the areas we control, such as our house or our office or our computer networks. We are responsible for the security in these places, even if we employ others to help make it happen. And then we have areas of interest, and these are areas where our assets are at times that we do not control, such as for a house, the public streets, or if you're a business, the industrial area car park, and of course in cyberspace, the internet. And as we map out the locations and the areas and the routes between them, we should think not only of how the assets are accessed, but also how the assets themselves move. What routes do they use to go from location to location? What routes do they take along which paths? Now at this stage you're probably already looking at these maps and noticing some of the access points that might need some more security measures, or you could just close them. If they aren't being used, if it's a hole in the fence, or you've got your Bluetooth on, you can mend the hole in the fence, switch off your Bluetooth. And there are some technical aspects to this, such as working out which devices are connected to which other devices. You don't need to know this detail for the first assessment, and mapping out your networks is a task for your technical staff anyway. But if you have reasonably good ideas about which assets are on which devices, and so what the consequences are, the impacts of each of those devices being nicked, bricked or tricked, then you can see which locations, which devices are most important, and focus on securing those in the first place.
So we've looked at what we are protecting and why, so we can prioritize what we focus on, and we've looked at where they are and how they move around, so we can work out where to put our security, where to focus our security. Now we need to think about the good guys who are going to be using those assets and the bad guys who are going to try and get hold of them to nick, brick or trick them, so that we can work out what those security measures need to be able to protect them.